Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Gallant Journey from 1946. This is continuing my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. This is yet another film William Wellman made about flight. This is not about a flyer in war. This is kind of a different flight film than his previous ones. This is about aviation pioneer John Joseph Montgomery, who built gliders, and actually the movie claims came up with the name airplane. I don't know if that's true. And he flew in these gliders, which were kind of early airplanes 20 years before the Wright brothers ever did. The film was a way to make a bigger deal about John Montgomery. The San Diego City of Commerce tried to campaign to make it a film, and Columbia bought the film rights actually from them to drum up more interest in him, and I guess the city of San Diego also. But William Wellman was determined. He actually helped write this film with Byron Morgan, and he directed and produced it as well, and he wanted to immortalize this aviation pioneer who wasn't as well remembered when it happened. The first couple times weren't a big deal because his father was a powerful politician, and I'm quoting him on this. He didn't want his queer son who made flying machines to embarrass him. But later, after his father, I believe, had died, he had other flights that made him a big deal, but he kind of got forgot in the history books. Now, I think he was actually the first flights in America. Apparently there were successful gliders made in Europe before this, from what I read after seeing this film, but it's still a pretty big deal that he did this at the time. It's not the gritty man's man director that you expect from William Wellman. This is just a film about aviation, and he really wanted to capture that. John Joseph Montgomery, and it shows him from early adulthood when he started building gliders, and his relationship with his eventual wife, played by Janet Blair, who witnesses all this and is in awe of his ideas of flight. John Joseph Montgomery didn't have a lot of money and wasn't successful for a while, but he's taken in by Jesuit priests who let him experiment there, and he does various experiments. He keeps flying. He gets vertigo at one point. He hires a famous stuntman to help fly for him because he can't, and he even makes a gold finding machine through sand that he sells a patent for and gets very rich. And sometimes he's up and then he gets knocked down again, and it goes through his whole life as you learn about all the aviation pioneering he used to do. This film is probably the most sappy and sentimental of the Wellman films I've ever seen, and it's very much between hammy and historical and informative. Fortunately, it doesn't do too much. That was the origin of that, which can be very annoying with both prequels and historical dramas. The only time they do that is when he kind of just claims to have just come up with the name airplane, which I still haven't found any evidence that he did, but sure, maybe. Glenn Ford definitely gets the wide-eyed, heart-on-his-sleeve portrayal that really fits with the film. I think Wellman, he wants to really show you this man and why he was important. Wellman was probably more interested in informing. It's not really one of his best remembered films, and it's of someone who is not one of the better remembered aviation pioneers. Although I read a review of this in an old flight magazine, and they seemed to think that most people who are into flight would know who John Joseph Montgomery was. I had never heard of him, and I think most people probably haven't. Gallant Journey tried to correct that, and I think Wellman wanted it to happen, but he just doesn't have the spirit and the experimentation that he had in previous films. And it's interesting that this seemed to be a film that the studio wanted him to do, that he had some passion for. It's not really brought up in his filmography usually, and he doesn't bring it up in his book, and it's not brought up in interviews or anything written about Wellman. It's a fine historical drama. I actually thought it kept a good pace to it. It's only about 86 minutes. There are some parts where, since it's just going through his life, it feels like it's more concerned with the information than the story, which is another problem I've always had with historical dramas. I get you want me to understand this man, and certainly a lot of people didn't, and you want us to be informed about him, but it kind of hurts the drama because you're too concerned with information. Like, why don't I fall in love with this character? Just don't expect me to fall in love with it just because it's a movie. That's a bad instinct. That's going all throughout Gallant Journey, unfortunately. Wellman did have very good control of the camera in this film. The aviation shots, some were pretty awe-inspiring. Others, I think, because I still think Wings is his best shot aviation film. He was still actually flying during the production of that, and I find it interesting that I've never felt he shot flying sequences as thrilling as when he made Wings. I like The High and the Mighty and Island in the Sky, but In this film, I did think they captured kind of what it would be like in a glider, or what it felt like to be in a glider. He did get aviation experts to come in to make sure they're making proper gliders and flying them correctly. And he also had, the chief stunt pilot was Paul Mance. He could crash a plane on cue. Apparently he did. I've never seen 12 O'Clock High, but he does a famous plane crash, and that was one of his claims to fame. And in Gallant Journey, he was the one piloting all the gliders. Gallant Journey is one of the Wellmans where it was kind of a forgotten Wellman film, and when I heard it was about early aviation, especially obscure early aviation, or obscure to most of us, I was a little like, oh, is this going to be a really boring movie? And it really wasn't. I thought the music by Marlon Skiles, I think, worked with the film. It is really very much a 1946 bland kind of studio movie in a lot of places, but Wellman did his best with it to really make it work. It's not an exceptional example. It's kind of just like a borderline studio historical drama, but Wellman seemed to do a good enough job with it. It wasn't critically a success at all. Any reviews I've read at the time seemed to kind of dismiss it and go, you know, whatever. I guess that's kind of the view you can get from it. It's kind of a pretty decent movie that you'd go, you know, whatever. But I kind of enjoyed it. I liked Glenn Ford's performance. I really liked Janet Blair, who I'm not as familiar with, but she's very pretty. There's one shot in it that's so Wellman, and I really loved it, and it's towards the end, and they do change the story a bit to give it more of a dramatic ending about his death, and they have him covered by Janet Blair. Wellman loves to not show things to the audience, and it's so Wellman, and then she turns around and you know he's dead, and he dies, but it's in every Wikipedia about it, but spoilers, I guess. But it's such a thrilling shot, and it almost doesn't fit because he hadn't really been doing that in this film at all, and I know he loves to do that. That's like his favorite kind of shot. He loves to kind of toy with the audience in that way and toy with the viewer. A lot of people talk about the teary-eyed ending, and that ending kind of struck me. I was kind of just watching this normal 46 studio film, and it's like a real shot of sincerity, and most of that's done in one shot. That scene was really powerful because it almost felt like it was from a different movie. It like broke with the conventions of the film, and the film breaks with its own conventions a couple times. At the beginning of the film, you have this old man explaining to some kids about flight and about John Joseph Montgomery, and Wellman uses that narratively at the beginning, but then it feels like he drops it, so you're not expecting it anymore, although the old man comes back at certain points, but you never see him again. I thought he was going to turn out to be John Joseph Montgomery. Obviously, I didn't know anything about that guy because he clearly couldn't have been, or, you know, someone in the film. Wellman seemed to know how to narratively work these things, even if it wasn't a film that was constructed in the tightest way. He seemed to get it to work the best as a film. He understood how to not use a traditional structure, but structure in a way so the film actually works. And I think that was something a good studio director really could do. When you think of a studio director, you think of them getting the job done and getting the picture to work. And I think Gallant Journey does that. It doesn't do really anything else. It's not a picture that sings. It's not a movie I would want to see again or need to see again. It's not the worst Wellman film, and I wouldn't put it on a list of the best Wellman films, but I think this film shows how good his instincts were as a studio director, that he could even make a film like this work the way it does. He might not have actually done the job he wanted to do in making John Joseph Montgomery a bigger name, but making the film actually work and flow fairly well, I think, was what a studio director needed to do, and it showed how Wellman could make it work as a decent story. He just didn't make it an incredible story. So if you have seen Gallant Journey and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And if you'd like to check out my other Wellman reviews, click on the annotation below for the Wellman review playlist. I have quite a few, as you will see. And thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.